The ballroom fell silent the moment the boy stepped forward. Crystal chandeliers glowed above polished marble floors, reflecting off glasses of expensive drinks held by men in tailored suits. Laughter filled the air, deals were being made, and cameras flashed from every corner. It was a room built for power, for wealth, for people who belonged. And right in the center of it all stood a boy who clearly didn't. His sneakers were worn out, his hoodie faded, and his hands trembled slightly as he held a small folded piece of paper. "Sir, please," he said quietly. The billionaire didn't even look at him. Ethan Caldwell, one of the most powerful men in the room, adjusted his cufflinks as if the boy didn't exist. "I said no interruptions," he muttered, his voice cold and dismissive. A few people nearby laughed. The boy swallowed, stepped forward again, gripping the paper tighter. "It's about the note," he said. This time the reaction didn't come from Ethan. It came from the crowd. Laughter spread quickly. "You mean that note?" one man said with a smirk. "Kid, billionaires couldn't figure it out, and you think you can?" More laughter followed. The boy didn't back down. "I'm not guessing," he said. "I know what it means." That was when Ethan finally looked at him. Slowly, calmly. His eyes scanned the boy from head to toe, measuring, judging. For a brief moment, the room held its breath. Then Ethan exhaled, unimpressed. "Security," he said flatly. "Get him out." 2 guards stepped forward immediately. The boy didn't move. "Just read it," he said, louder now. "That's all I'm asking." But Ethan had already turned away. "It's worthless," he said. The guards grabbed the boy by his arms. The paper slipped from his fingers and landed softly on the marble floor. No one picked it up. No one even looked at it. As he was dragged toward the exit, the boy turned his head one last time. His face wasn't angry. It wasn't scared. It was certain. "They all missed it," he said. No one listened. But they were wrong. Because that small, ignored piece of paper was worth $5 million, and the only person who could prove it had just been thrown out of the room. 3 weeks earlier, the city looked nothing like that ballroom. There were no chandeliers, no polished floors, no luxury, just cracked sidewalks, flickering streetlights, and buildings that had stopped being repaired years ago. This was where Ion lived. 17 years old, no connections, no money. Just a mind that never stopped working. He lived in a small one-room apartment above a repair shop. The walls were thin, the ceiling leaked when it rained, and most nights he was alone. His mother worked long shifts at a hospital laundry facility, leaving before sunrise and returning late at night, exhausted. But Ion didn't mind being alone. In fact, he preferred it. Because in silence, he noticed things other people didn't. Where others saw randomness, he saw patterns. Where others ignored details, he focused on them. It had been like that since he was a child. He solved puzzles no one gave him, cracked codes in old books, and found shortcuts in systems that weren't supposed to have any. His mother used to smile and say, "Your brain doesn't rest, does it?" He would shake his head and reply, "No. It just looks closer." One night, she told him something he never forgot. People miss things, Ion, not because they're stupid, but because they think they already understand. At the time, it sounded simple, but as he grew older, he realized it was the truth behind everything. Ion spent most of his time helping in the repair shop downstairs, fixing broken radios, rewiring old devices, and studying how things worked, and more importantly, how they failed. Machines made sense to him. People didn't. But patterns were everywhere, and once you saw them, you couldn't ignore them. Across the city, Ethan Caldwell lived in a completely different world. A billionaire. A visionary. A man whose decisions shaped industries. People didn't question him. They followed him. And 3 weeks ago, he did something no one expected. At a high-profile business summit, he held up a simple piece of paper and said, "There's $5 million for anyone who can tell me what this means." The room immediately leaned in. The paper was passed around, studied by executives, analysts, and some of the smartest minds in the country. It had words, numbers, and symbols, but nothing made sense. Theories came and went. Some said it was encrypted. Others said it was meaningless. By the end of the night, no one solved it. And Ethan simply said, "Exactly." The story spread quickly. News channels covered it. Social media exploded. Experts debated it for days. But no one had the answer. Because everyone was looking for something complicated, something advanced, something only a genius could solve. Ayan saw it on a broken phone screen at the repair shop. A customer had left a video playing. He wasn't paying attention at first until the image froze on the note. Something about it felt strange, not confusing. Familiar. He leaned closer and watched it again and again. Then he grabbed a pen and began writing not the content of the note, but its structure, the spacing, the alignment, the placement of symbols. Minutes turned into an hour. The noise around him faded. Everything faded, until suddenly it clicked. A pattern, hidden in plain sight. He looked down at his page and smiled. "People didn't miss it because it's hard," he whispered. "They missed it because it's simple." That night, he made a decision. He was going to that event, not as someone important, not as a guest, but as someone who understood. And now, back in that same ballroom, the note still lay on the floor. Unnoticed, unread, unsolved. And the one person who could change everything had just been thrown out. But the truth doesn't disappear just because people refuse to see it, and Ayan wasn't done yet. Outside the ballroom, the heavy doors slammed shut behind Ayan. The laughter inside faded, replaced by the cold silence of the hallway. For a moment he just stood there, breathing slowly, steadying himself. His arms still ached from the grip of the guards, but his mind wasn't on that. It was on the note. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a crumpled piece of paper, not the original, but his version. Every line, every symbol, every space, carefully rewritten from memory. He looked at it again, not reading it, studying it, because the words themselves meant nothing. That was the trick. Everyone in that room had tried to read it like a message, like a code, like something complicated. But Ayan knew better. "This isn't about what it says," he whispered. "It's about how it's placed." He moved toward a quiet corner near a window, away from the noise of the event. The city lights flickered in the distance, but he barely noticed. His eyes stayed locked on the paper. The spacing wasn't random. The symbols weren't decoration. Everything had a position. And position meant structure. He drew lines between the words, then between the symbols. Then he stepped back. For a second, nothing. Then suddenly, it clicked again. Not a sentence, not a code, a pattern, a shape. Ayan's eyes widened slightly. They weren't supposed to read it, he said under his breath. They were supposed to see it. Inside the ballroom, the energy had already shifted. The note was still being talked about, still being mocked. $5 million for a blank puzzle, one investor laughed. Classic Caldwell, another replied. Always playing games. Ethan stood near the center, calm as ever, watching the room, not participating, just observing. Because this wasn't about the answer. It was about the people trying to find it. Who they were, how they thought, what they missed. And so far, everyone had failed. Back outside, Ayan was moving faster now, not physically, mentally. His pen scratched across the paper as he redrew the structure again, cleaner this time. He removed the words completely, left only spacing, symbols, alignment. And then he rotated the page 90 degrees, nothing. He rotated it again, still nothing. Then one more time, upside down, and that's when he saw it. Clear, obvious, impossible to ignore once you noticed it. Ayan leaned back against the wall, staring at the paper. A slow smile spread across his face. "This isn't a puzzle," he said quietly. It's a filter. He folded the paper carefully and pushed himself off the wall. He had to get back inside. But this time, walking through the front door wasn't an option. At the side of the building, near the service entrance, staff moved in and out carrying trays and equipment. No one paid attention to them. No one looked twice. That was the difference between power and invisibility. Power gets noticed. Invisibility gets ignored. Ayan pulled his hoodie tighter and walked toward the service door. Head down. Calm. Like he belonged there. 1 step. 2 steps. No one stopped him. Inside, the atmosphere was different, less polished, less controlled. Staff members rushed between rooms, focused on their work. Ayan moved through them quietly, observing, timing, waiting. He reached the back hallway that connected to the main ballroom. Voices echoed faintly from the other side. He was close, but not close enough, because getting in wasn't the hardest part. Being heard was. Inside the ballroom, Ethan checked his watch. Last 10 minutes, he announced. The room shifted again. Final attempts. Last guesses. A few people stepped forward with confident expressions, only to leave seconds later shaking their heads. Wrong, all of them. Ethan wasn't surprised. He had already seen enough. In the hallway, Ayan heard the announcement. 10 minutes. That was it. If he didn't get in now, it was over. He looked at the door, then at the people moving around him, then back at the paper in his hand. They're still looking for meaning, he said softly. They still don't get it. He took a deep breath, then walked forward. The door opened. Not dramatically. Not loudly. Just enough. Ayan stepped inside. Again. This time, no one noticed immediately. All attention was on the front of the room. On Ethan. On the challenge. On the $5 million. Ayan moved along the edge of the crowd, staying just out of focus. His eyes scanned the room quickly. Same faces. Same confidence. Same mistake. Then Ethan spoke again. Time's up, he said. A quiet wave of disappointment moved through the crowd. No one? Someone asked. Ethan shook his head slightly. Seems not. And that's when Ayan stepped forward. Wait. The word wasn't loud, but it carried. Heads turned. Faces tightened. Recognition hit instantly. It's that kid again, someone whispered. A few people laughed under their breath. Didn't security already deal with him? Ayan ignored all of it. His eyes stayed locked on Ethan. I know what it is, he said. The room reacted exactly the same way as before. Dismissive, amused, annoyed. But this time, Ayan didn't look unsure. He didn't hesitate. And Ethan noticed that. For a brief moment, something shifted. Not in the room. In Ethan's expression. Curiosity. Small, barely visible. But there. He raised his hand slightly. The guard stopped. Go on, Ethan said. The room fell silent again. Not out of respect, out of curiosity. Ayan stepped closer. Not rushing, not nervous, controlled. He held up his paper. You told everyone to read it, he said. Ethan nodded once. I did. Ayan shook his head. That's the problem. A few confused looks spread through the crowd. What are you talking about? Someone muttered. Ayan turned the paper slightly. They're all trying to understand the words, he continued. Trying to decode it, he looked directly at Ethan. But it's not meant to be read. Now the room was completely still. No laughter, no whispers, just silence. Because something felt different. Not proven yet, but possible. Ayan lowered the paper slightly. It's not a message, he said. It's a test. Ethan didn't speak. Didn't react. But his eyes didn't move either. Locked on the boy in front of him. And for the first time that night, the room wasn't laughing anymore. Because they were starting to realize this wasn't a joke. And the boy they ignored might be the only one who actually understood. The silence in the room felt different now. Not awkward. Not dismissive. Heavy. Ayan took one more step forward, holding the paper study in his hand. Every eye in the room was on him now. People who had laughed just minutes ago were no longer smiling. They were waiting. Ayan looked at Ethan Caldwell, calm and focused. "You said $5 million to anyone who could tell you what this means," he said. "But you never said it was a puzzle." Ethan didn't respond. He didn't interrupt. That alone changed everything. Ayan continued. "This note," he said, lifting it slightly, "isn't about the words. It's not encrypted. It's not complex." He paused for just a second. "It's intentionally simple." A faint shift moved through the crowd. Confusion, realization, discomfort. Ayan turned the paper around and held it up so others could see. "Everyone here tried to read it like a message," he said. "Because that's how you think. You expect complexity. You expect something that proves how smart you are." His voice stayed steady, but you didn't question the instruction. Now the room was completely still. "You told them to read it," Ayan said, looking back at Ethan. "And that's exactly why they failed." A pause. Then, "I didn't read it." Another pause. "I looked at it." Ayan stepped closer and pointed at the structure of the note. The spacing, the alignment, the placement of every symbol, it forms something when you stop focusing on the words. He turned the paper upside down, then slightly angled it. And when you see it the right way, he stopped, then said quietly, "It's your company's original logo." A sharp reaction cut through the silence. Some gasped. Others leaned forward. A few people quickly pulled out their phones, searching, comparing, and then it hit them. The shape, the structure. It matched perfectly, hidden in plain sight. Ethan didn't move, didn't speak, but for the first time that night, he smiled. Not a polite smile, not a social one, a real one. Slow. Measured. Almost impressed. "You're the first person," Ethan said finally, his voice calm but clear, "who understood the difference between looking and thinking." The room stayed silent, because now everything had changed. Ayan lowered the paper slowly. "I figured it wasn't about solving something difficult," he said. "It was about noticing something obvious that everyone else ignored." Ethan nodded once. "Exactly." He stepped forward, closing the distance between them. $5 million, Ethan said, "is what I offered." Ayan said nothing, didn't react, didn't even smile. And that made Ethan pause, because most people in that room would have already celebrated. But Ayan didn't come for the money. He came for the truth. Ethan studied him for a moment, then said something no one expected. "I'm not giving you $5 million. A ripple of shock moved through the crowd. But before anyone could react, Ethan continued, "I'm giving you something better." He turned slightly toward the audience. "This boy just did what none of you could," he said. "Not because he's richer, not because he's more educated," he looked back at Ayan, "but because he thinks differently." A pause. "Then, starting tomorrow, you work with me." The room froze. Investors exchanged looks. Executives went silent, because they understood what that meant. Opportunity, access, power, a future that couldn't be bought. Ayan blinked once, not shocked, just processing. Ethan extended his hand. And this time, Ayan didn't hesitate. He shook it. Because in a room full of people trying to prove how smart they were, he was the only one who chose to see what was already there. Most people are waiting for big opportunities. Complex ones. Hidden ones. But the truth is, the biggest opportunities are often the simplest ones. They just look too small, so everyone ignores them. If you were in that room, would you have noticed it? Or would you have been like everyone else, looking for something complicated? Comment your answer below. And remember, sometimes the difference between failure and success is just seeing what others refuse to see.